I wish it was as easy as putting these two phones head to head in specs based on pricing in one particular region, because that would make my job 100 times easier. But no. Pricing varies wildly based on region, as does availability, and specs only tell half the story. So here's my best attempt at evaluating the hot new Google Pixel 9a versus the established OnePlus 13R. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas, and I really like both of these phones this year. They are both currently, and in the US, $500 mid-range smartphones that take two extremely different approaches, and it feels like this year, they're closer than they really ever have been. They're both slab-style, flat-sided phones that feel good in the hand, though I'd argue the 13R feels just a bit more premium with a glass back instead of a plastic one, and up front the bezels and punch hole are quite a lot smaller, which make it feel higher end. Add to that the IR blaster and the 3-stage alert slider, and it's my favourite of the two, though it is noticeably bigger, which could be a turn off for quite a few people. And the 9A has its own tricks up its sleeve, with an almost flush camera bump, which I really like, as well as the more secure IP68 rating over the IP65 of the OnePlus. So I would trust the Pixel to survive a dunk in the pool much more than I would the 13R. They both feel much more robust compared to their predecessors, and that is no surprise. Guys, we're really trying to hit 500,000 subscribers. If you wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, would mean the world to us. Cheers. They also pack in massive batteries which add heft, which makes them just feel denser. The 9A's new 5100 mAh battery is very good, but it can't beat the 6000 mAh battery you'll find in the 13R. And since the chip, the memory, the storage, the display, they're all different as well, you can't really put it down to just the 13R's bigger battery. And where I'd call the 9A a sort of 1.5 day phone, the 13R is more like a 2-day phone. So use that and extrapolate it to your own personal usage. But I achieved those figures with manual brightness, about 50% most of the time, mostly Wi-Fi with a little bit of LTE, Bluetooth buds connected for about an hour per day, and my Garmin sports watch connected permanently. I don't do loads on my phone, I don't scroll through TikTok or Reels or anything like that. It's mostly just Discord and Chrome, to be totally honest. And the charging tech is also going to play a factor in what you want, because the 13R's 80 watt charging is way faster to top up than what you find on the Pixel 9a, but there's no wireless charging in the 13R, so you'll have to go Google if you don't want to charge with a cable. Again, it's not black and white, there's a bit of nuance to this one. And the same sort of goes for the cameras. I mean, on paper, they trade blows, with the 13R having the bigger main sensor, the smaller ultra-wide, same size selfie, and then an additional telephoto at 2x where the Pixel 9a doesn't have a dedicated telephoto. But when I put the images side by side, it's more the sort of tones and what people would call the color science that's actually going to sway you instead of the numbers that you'll see on paper. The 13R has a really good camera, I cannot lie, but based on what I saw with my own eyes and when taking these photos, I'd say the 9A is more accurate and perhaps just more reliable across the board when it comes to captures, even if images could come across as maybe a little boring in some instances. And unlike years ago, where the Pixel A series wiped the floor with its mid-range competition, this year it's as close as it really ever has been. And I invite you to let us all know your thoughts about these samples in the comments and which ones you might prefer. I like the bigger main sensor of the OnePlus, but the worse ultra-wide I feel is quite obvious and it doesn't capture as big a field of view either. And both cameras can capture Ultra HD 4K 60fps video, which is really nice to see, good quality footage at a more cut down price tag. Of course, for playing around with those different modes, then editing and manipulating images after the fact, Google does have OnePlus's number. With not only its phenomenal camera app, which has stuff like Add Me and long exposure, but then stuff like Magic Editor, where in Google Photos, it might not be exclusive to the Pixel, but stuff like Audio Eraser is, and it feels like Google just does this better than pretty much everyone else. Not that you're getting the full Google AI experience with the Pixel 9a, because it's using Gemini XXS, which is a cut down model, and due to it only having 8GB of RAM, it can't run those bigger models that you'll find on the likes of the Pixel 9 Pro, for example. Stuff like Call Notes, Pixel Screenshots, and the Pixel Weather AI Overview are all missing from the 9a over those bigger phones. But that said, Pixel Studio is still here if you do want a text-to-image generator, And I'd call the software just still a nicer experience with the 9A versus the 13R, not to mention the fact that the 9A gets 7 years of major upgrades versus the 4 that you'll get on the OnePlus 13R. But where the 9A is being supported in software for longer, I'd argue that OnePlus gave the 13R just a better bet in long-term performance. See, I think both phones are more than quick enough for pretty much most people right now. You know, doom scrolling, light gaming, watching videos, taking pictures, these phones are both very quick and should stay relatively so for a couple of years at least. But we've seen tensor pixels slow down quicker than Snapdragon OnePlus devices, even the more cut down models, and given the 13R is using what was last year the very best chip you could get, with 50% more RAM than the Pixel 9a, 100% more starting storage, and that storage is of a quicker standard as well, it's not really a comparison in raw horsepower, but particularly when you look at estimated performance 3 or 4 years down the line. So I'd say that if you need the quicker phone, or you just upgrade your phone every 4 years at least, maybe go for the 13R. Though to be honest, if you're not all about the elite performance, the 9A is decently fast and should stay that way for a 24-month contract, for example. Again, not black and white, there is context and nuance to this decision. Like the displays. So the first, maybe even the deciding factor for some people, is that the 13R's display is just larger. It's also rated to be slightly sharper and has those thinner bezels. But when you actually use them side by side, the 9A's panel feels better to me in pretty much every scenario other than in HDR, where the OnePlus 13R's panel just sort of kicks into overdrive and boosts brightness in content to support HDR. And the thing is that most content isn't in HDR. And so there are very limited times where you will find that extra brightness to actually be useful, because day to day, the 9A's panel just feels considerably brighter. The sort of thing that you might use out and about when you're messaging someone and it's direct sunlight out there. You're going to notice that more with the 9A, and it's, for me, the better panel. And those optical in-display fingerprint scanners, well, neither of them are perfect, I'll be totally honest, and they are a big step down from the ultrasonic units you will find in both of these phones' sort of step-up models, but I'd say the 9A's is just a hair more reliable. I've had zero connectivity issues with either of these phones, and the speakers are good, but the 9A's are sort of deeper with a fuller sound at the cost of clarity, whereas the 13R's had a bit more sparkle out of the box, but just didn't feel as full. I'll put up the pricing for various regions on the screen right now, along with the US dollar equivalent for some context, but pricing and availability, it's gonna vary a lot, and it might change even further with the current financial climate, economic climate, whatever you wanna call it. But I'll wrap it up with this. If you want a reliable mid-ranger with lots of software features and you don't play heaps of games or need the ultimate speed, the 9A is a brilliant phone. But if you do need those things, the 13R is the way to go. I have to pick a winner here, and I'm gonna actually, to my own surprise, pick the Pixel 9A. Its software, its camera reliability, its shape, its size, the fact the camera doesn't stick out is fantastic. But let's just say that the fierce competition this year is doing wonders for our options as consumers. Let me know in the comments which of these two mid-rangers you would pick, or do you have a better alternative that wipes the floor with both of them? I'd love to hear that. I really like both of these this year. I like the 9A a little bit better. I prefer the smaller size, and the battery is good enough this year. Whilst you're down there in the comments, by the way, please do hit like if you enjoyed today's content and subscribe to never miss another upload. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I will catch you later. Cheers.